In this video, we'll be covering the role of SFB, the Student Funding Board. Although we share an office in student involvement, RSO and SFB play two different roles with student organizations. The RSO leadership team mostly oversees organization registration and advising. Organizations do not have immediate access to funds. Organizations have privilege to funds from the school via Student Funding Board if they successfully completed Fiscal 1.5. But an organization must fill out the funding application in order to have access to this money, and these forms are then processed by the Student Funding Board. The Student Funding Board focuses primarily on money and finances for student organizations. The board reviews and allocates all funding requests. They will also be able to answer any questions you may have about receiving money for student-run events. SFB facilitates the fiscal management trainings, which are separate from the RSO trainings. You can reach them at sfb@gmu.edu. Information regarding fiscal management can be found on the RSO page of the Student Involvement site. Here you can find the Fiscal Management Handbook and possible forms you may need to fill out, such as the RSO Payment Request Form, the Purchase Order Form, the Food and Beverage Form, and other contracting forms. Now we're going to go over the major steps of planning an event in a suggested timeline. A point to keep in mind is always be sure to apply for funding with a generous amount of time before your event. At 4 to 5 months before your event is when you want to book space on 25 Live. 4 months before your event, decide on any entertainment or lecturers and discuss the insurance requirement to ensure that the person has the required coverage. You need to submit an invoice from the entertainment or lecturers as well as insurance proof for them. Fill out the contract on the computer and take care to include all required information. Send this to student involvement from review as well as the entertainment or lecturer. Have the entertainment fill out the VA W-9 form and independent contractor form while waiting for a response to the submitted contract. 3 months before the event is when you request event services and collect any invoices or price estimates from any catering or advertising. At 2 months before your event, you want to have filled out a Student Funding Board application. This must always include the contract, insurance, invoices, an updated event services estimate, and estimates for any other costs, such as from catering or advertising. As the leader of your organization, it is important that you are delegating tasks to your members as well as maintaining constant communication to student involvement, whether it be with FSB for financial reasons or RSO for any support or questions. Once you've received your funding allocation from the Student Funding Board, you must make arrangements to spend the funding. Funding is not given retroactively if your event has already occurred, and remember that in order to access funding, you must apply for it. The most common forms you'll need to fill out are the Purchase Order Form and the RSO Payment Request Form. The Purchase Order Form can be used for the event for certain vendors, and you must ask to ensure the vendor takes purchase orders. The RSO Payment Request Form is used for reimbursements or for payments to vendors and others. Keep in mind that if you are getting food from an off-campus vendor, you must always include a food and beverage form. Any off-campus vendor must be an approved caterer. Then you must make sure that the vendor in which you are getting the funding is the approved vendor. For example, not all Panera Breads or Jersey Mike's or Domino's Pizzas are an approved vendor. You must make sure that you have the correct location in order to purchase food from the vendor. Take note. If checks are made out to your organization, the cashier's office will only accept those that include the university name, for example, JMU Bicycling Club. Checks must also be endorsed on the back with the org number and account code for deposit. The fiscal trainings are part of Phase 3 of re-registration. 1.5 is done in person and is done by all RSOs, and 3.0 is done online and is only done by Tier 3 orgs. During Phase 4 of re-registration, specifically on September 24, 2016, is a summit for all presidents of each RSO. Please remember to save the date. This is mandatory to be a registered student organization.